Yeah, well, where we're standing, I spent my junior days fishing. It's all I ever wanted to do. The library was just up on the corner here, so I was in there looking and reading fishing books. I know just about every species in Australia, even though I haven't caught half of them or seen the rest. It's just, yeah, I was totally fascinated by it, and that's really all I ever wanted to do. Have a family, catch some fish and live by the ocean. Pretty simple, really. Just being on the water is good for you. Hello, my name's Craig Garland. I'm a local fisherman residing in Boat Harbour, Tasmania. At this period of time, we have never had as many bait fish as we have in the water. The tuna were passing through here back in the 80s and 90s, but there was nothing to hold them here. Those seabirds that we've got now, there was no feed here for them. Now we've got all the feed, and that's all happening. Whales, gannets, terns, kestrels, you name it, they're all here, plus all those fish species. They're advocating, once again, a sustainable yield of a bait fish species. The overriding message from the community is leave these sardines alone.
The sardine has a key role in the marine ecosystem. It's one of the key species that's feeding on the zooplankton, and it's one of the key prey species for a wide variety of species, from marine mammals, seabirds, game fish, squids, and sharks. My name is Tony Coslow. I'm a biological and fisheries oceanographer, and I've worked at CSIRO and Scripps Institution of Oceanography. There's very little known about the sardine in Bass Strait. At this point, there's been one preliminary survey of the population, so it looked at the abundance of eggs in the environment. It didn't look at how many eggs the average female sardine is producing. So until the surveys are carried out fully, it's really important that the fishery develop really quite slowly, because we really don't have a very good idea at this point really what the population size is.
You've got to understand what role sardines play in the ecosystem and what effect that's going to have by removing them from the areas that they live. I'm John Stanfield. I'm a very keen recreational fisher, and I've fished in Tasmanian waters for my entire life. Fish like salmon, kingfish, snapper all predate on sardines, so do tuna. But bluefin will look for bait fish, and so the association with what I'm trying to catch and the bait fish is there. I'm not necessarily eating the bait fish, but they are absolutely an indicator of where other fish are. So food chain wise, species like snapper, kingfish, salmon and tuna are what recreational fishers are after, but then looking down like the bottom end of the food chain, which isn't normally an interest for recreational fishers, and a lot of the time that's down the barrel of a microscope, but I think forage feeders like sardines eat algae as well. So to keep that ecosystem in balance, then there needs to be a population.
The sardine is quite sensitive to environmental fluctuations, and we know the environment fluctuates quite a bit. Right now there's, for example, a huge algal bloom over South Australia. All these environmental fluctuations can have a huge impact on the sardine, and sardine populations can go through boom and bust cycles quite readily. And there's relatively few year classes in the sardine population, so that within a few years the sardine can go from looking as if it's very healthy to declining quite severely.
When you take one thing, it can be the most minuscule thing, you take it out of that food chain, that can leave big holes and contribute to a greater problem. So, you look at that, okay, we're taking out all these sardines, we're filling the water up with sewage from fish farms, creating dead zones, deoxygenating, and everything that's happening in South Australia, we've got all the conditions here right now.
If you look at Bass Strait's got a very slow flushing rate, takes about 180 days to flush. They're talking about they've put kingfish and salmon pens in there, which are associated with increased nutrient load. And nutrients are a driver for algal growth. So when you think about we've got increased nutrients at the same time as taking out forage fish which eat algae, then the balance is upset. Like, as far as indicators of an unbalanced ecosystem goes, so last year we had salps appear in very large numbers, followed by bioluminescence and jellyfish, moon jellyfish. Those three, like individually, they're indicators of an ecosystem that's out of balance, but three together is a fairly clear indicator that we've got some problems.
Small fish like anchovies and sardines are absolutely critical in the diet of penguins and other seabirds. We have to be very, very aware that this food source is already under pressure because of ocean warming. My name is Lesley Kurek. I'm a registered carer for NRE, specialising in seabirds. There have been huge changes over the years since I have started looking after penguins, and the biggest change I'm noticing is we're getting more cases of malnutrition in birds, particularly the chicks and the fledglings and those penguins going into molt. They're not able to access enough fish for those critical periods of their life cycle. The sardines that the penguins rely on, if the ocean is warm, they will go further out or down deeper, making it harder for penguins to feed their chicks and themselves. It seems to me madness that we would consider putting more pressure on a species by taking away their food source when they're already doing it tough.
What concerns me the most is the risks associated with depleting an incredibly important part of the marine food chain. Like, what effect is that going to have on predatory fish, on whales? Like, particularly the humpback migration goes through Bass Strait or either side, so it sort of splits. Some go up the east coast and some go round up the west coast. But whales will eat something in the order of 1.4 tonnes a day, so there needs to be an abundance of fish. And I think, like, if we're reducing the abundance of sardines without consideration of everything else that eats them, then I think that's a risk that really needs to be a point of focus.
Tasmania is different. We're nature-based. We're trying to attract people to come here because of those nature-based experiences. Well, you take those sardines out, there goes your bird life, there goes your whales, there goes your tuna.
It makes me very fearful of the future for penguins and other seabirds. It makes me fearful for our future as well. I mean, I would hate to see the time when a penguin becomes only a picture in a child's storybook.
So we're in a unique position here. There's sardine population in Bass Strait. It's virtually unknown. It's never been fished before, so it's what we call a virgin biomass, virgin fishery. There's been one preliminary survey, and it indicates that there probably is a fishery potential there, but it is still a great deal that's uncertain. What needs to happen now is that the government needs to make an investment to carry out the science fully and correctly, to have confidence in their biomass estimate, and then to develop the fishery relatively gradually and in a way that it doesn't go beyond what's sustainable. It's much easier in a fishery to develop the fishery, to have it expand gradually, than to try to contract it. Once people are in the fishery and they've invested in it, there's great reluctance to have it contract. So it's quite important that the fishery develops slowly.
Over the years, I've seen or I've witnessed large-scale changes in the marine ecosystem. So fish species, we don't see as many cooter, and they're a lot smaller than what they used to be. The size of the large sand flathead down this end of the state at least has reduced. Whitebaits all but disappeared from our rivers. Bastard trumpeter aren't as plentiful as they used to be. Moving away from fish species, then the habitat that they're part of has also changed. So giant kelp used to be prolific around Tasmania, and now it's all but disappeared. I think through my own observations over my lifetime, we're going in the wrong direction. That's what I think. I would really love to see, a pause and thought about how we treat our oceans, and develop a plan where we can still harvest fish, but it's done in a way that keeps a balance.
Well, my name's Bob Drysdale. I've been retired from fishing for about 15, 20 years now. Before I started in that fishery, there was copious amounts miles and miles of schools of jack mackerel and tuna, and it was so wonderful. Then a chap came from South Africa, bought several boats, called the calf boats at the time, and they were purse seining huge amounts of jack mackerel. And since that time, that lasted I think for about 8 years, we hardly ever see a school of jack mackerel. I live here and look out there and I just don't see them. They're not there. All I can ascertain is the jack mackerel was seriously depleted. Do we want to see the sardines go the same way? And when the jack mackerel were being decimated, the tuna was scarce. With my experience of jack mackerel has caused me to worry about the sardine industry. Are we going to deplete that? Will we ever see something else take the food chain to replace that? Maybe it's the last part of the food chain. Is there another smaller food chain, or is that going to be the end?
What I've witnessed in my time is fish down of species after species, and then a failure to correct the action that was done. It takes years to address overfishing, and sometimes it never recovers. I started fishing in the 80s and they were on a species called snotty trevally. Then the trawlers found where they were in northeast Bass Strait, and in 2 seasons they took the spawning stock. I went to catch my trevally for the next 2 or 3 years, they weren't there. Our fishery here was off the recruits of that spawning stock. And with snotties, they don't handle, they fall out of the nets. They threw away quite possibly more than what they actually caught. That was just a gold rush mentality, and then they moved on to the orange roughy first. They said, oh, this is a limitless resource, and it took them 2 years. They were overfishing it, they were coming in with deck holds, they didn't factor in, they couldn't process it all, and a lot of that ended up in the tip in St Helens. That was orange roughy. Before that, it was the eastern gemfish. A couple of years, the trawlers cleaned them out, and they set a recovery plan in place. They're showing a little bit of coming back now, but this is 40 years later. This is intergenerational theft, this approach to managing the fisheries. It's not acceptable anymore. We know what is not good. And if you look off our west coast right now, we've got trawlers coming from New Zealand fishing the blue grenadier fishery, the spawning biomass, taking thousands of tonnes. They've collapsed their own fishery, and this is the other absurdity. That blue grenadier fishery in New Zealand achieved MSC certification, right? It's supposed to be the gold standard for sustainability. They gave it to the hoki fishery in New Zealand. Guess what happened 3 months later? It collapsed. So you can't take any faith into these awards and this bullshit they put out in the media as this is sustainable, because it's not. And they also are pushing a species of albatross to extinction over there, that hoki fishery. And now they're over here bringing their factory trawlers and taking ours. It's absolutely disgraceful. We've been sold out. And that's one thing I've learned in my time in Parliament. They're pushing their view, and guess who gets screwed out of it all? Us, the community, the place we live in. So we have to short circuit that trajectory and do things a little bit different from here on in, and it can start right now with this sardine fishery. Leave the bastards alone and let's see what we can get out of that.
I've read some of the stuff where they only want to take 15% of the biomass of 200,000 tonnes. Well, we went all through this with them jack mackerel, and there was 100 people at these meetings worried about it. If you deplete a part of the food chain, something's going to happen which is not good. Are we going to go down that track again? I believe we will. You can blow these 15% stuff around on the biomass, but I'll bet you that'll go 30%. Who's going to stop it?
it very much looks like, if there's $1 to be made, then they're going to fall in favour of, corporate interests. The watering down of the EPBC Act just before the federal election was pretty telling. Like the Magean skates are like a species on the brink of extinction, and our political elite decided that they'd water down our environmental laws to support salmon farming outcomes. Is it a frustration? Absolutely, it's a frustration.
When you get large entities and large biomass extractions, everyone gets screwed eventually. Nature, us, community. So we know that now. That's not some theory. It's cold, stark reality. That's the trajectory we've been on in the past. And Tasmania being Tasmanian and trading off this unique, clean, green brand, well, we have to maintain that, and that comes through when we manage our fisheries. You can have your cake and eat it too. That's my message. Leave them in the water, and if we do a cost benefit, where the returns are, it will show that there is a greater overall benefit leaving those fish where they are to this point in time.
All of the carers of seabirds, and particularly the ones I mentor, are very, very worried of the effect of huge mass-scale fishing of sardines and anchovies will have the knock-on effect of the demise of certain species of seabirds, and in particular penguins. I feel very strongly that I don't want, for the sake of penguins and seabirds, any sardine fishing in Tasmania, simply because it is going to upset the whole marine ecosystem, and our penguins do not need that extra pressure on them because they're having to deal with climate change at the moment.
People have had to put up with it so long, they just think, well, what's the use, Nothing's going to change. It's always been the same. And guess what? I was told I'd never get in as an independent. There's no way. Well, I did. So things will change. Things do change, but you've got to force it. So, you have to be really, really vocal about this, wherever you sit in this state, whether you're a nature lover, whether you're a fisher, whether you're somebody that can just take the evidence in hand and make an informed decision. This is a big issue, and it's reflective of management in other areas too.
There's got to be a drawback to what is reasonable, and it's not a sole focus on what is most profitable. It's like what is going to leave our environment in a condition that's suitable for future generations. Because at the moment our trajectory is going in the wrong direction.